Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you by Growmark FS. Keeping up on the latest in ag is a challenge, to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic grain and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. And good afternoon. Welcome into Market Talk for this Thursday, June 24th. Great to have you here with us. Your host, Jesse Allen, here as we are live remote here today. We're in the Heartland. We're in Iowa, and we're going to be attending a couple fairs here today. And tomorrow we'll be at the Butler County Fair and then the Howard County Fair tomorrow. So we're live on location with Market Talk in the Heartland here today. Got a lot to talk about with our grain trade as we wrap it up on this Thursday. Let's bring in our good friend John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing. John, good afternoon to you. And I know I drove through some rain and thunderstorms in parts of Missouri and southeast Iowa here today as we got to our final destination. And that's what the trade's looking at here, is this rain potential moving through the central and eastern Corn Belt. And that seems to be what we are trading here on this Thursday, John.
At least I was on the early morning and the overnight session. Obviously, a pretty good bunch of green on the radar, as we say, across Iowa and Missouri, now moving into Illinois. We've been fortunate enough to pick up some here in eastern, southern half of Wisconsin as well today. So it's kind of turning into a have and have not type situation in terms of the people who've got some moisture. Even some regions might be looking at getting too much. We'll have to see how that plays out. But then again, here we got that Minnesota-Iowa border, and north and west of there still looking for some rain overall, which, is still going to be something we got to watch as we move into the month of July. So we got a lot of things moving on in this market right now. Prices obviously have broken extremely off those highs to today's lows. Did see a nice snapback on prices today as we did get some more friendlier news. So we'll have to see if that can kind of hold things together a little bit.
And talk about that snapback, because we were sharply lower overnight, and we did rally this market quite a bit, even though we finished mostly slightly lower across all of the grains, except for spring wheat, of course. That's got its own issues, but we did see that snapback. It saw some friendly news. I know we saw some good export news this morning. Talk about what we saw that kind of caused that snapback today, John.
Well, let's get into that corn market. First off, obviously we tested a very key support level. We did hold that this morning, a bit of a trend line run underneath the lows in that December contract, and we got back above that. So that was a little bit cautionary this morning. Heard a little bit of a chatter. Don't know if anything's confirmed on it, that China may have stepped into the market and bought some old crop corn today. So we'll see if that comes true. We'll have to watch the export sales announcements or next week's totals to see if that comes into place. And then we're looking at these acre numbers. And actually, I had a private analyst firm today was talking lowering their acre estimates down to about 94 million and change. So that's going to be kind of more in line. So obviously the market has been kind of focusing on that acre report next week. Maybe we just got to the stage here. We've taken enough money off this table. We've taken enough value off this table. Maybe we can find some place to stabilize here. Not sure we're out of the woods at all yet. We still got options expiration tomorrow, so that keeps me very cautious in terms of what happens in the marketplace. At least that's what was driving corn. Soybeans, obviously, we got a pretty good value here in my mind. Now, obviously, the charts are still pointing lower. We're still watching the weather, but China's been in the market. They've picked up beans here on announced sales the last couple of days. There was talk they bought more beans last night, so we'll have to watch the export sales numbers tomorrow morning, see if those come through. And obviously, when we're looking at $12.90 on November beans, I don't consider that to be rationing much supply. When you look at the supply picture, even if the acre number does go up a couple million, it's going to stay historically tight.
Now, John, as well, we're talking rains here throughout the Corn Belt, and that's the big storyline, one of the big storylines heading into the weekend. But that Northern Plains, no rains there. That spring wheat crop is in dire straits, and that market, the Minneapolis market, continues to be propped up by that hot and dry forecast. And I'm hearing from a lot of producers up there that crop is pretty much at the point where it's not coming back, John, and that's helping support those prices for Minneapolis wheat.
Exactly. We got to the stage now we're starting to think about what's the abandonment percentage and how many of those acres aren't even going to turn into anything in that regard, which, again, is heartbreaking for those producers and the work they go through to get that put together. But the weather forecasts after we kind of get through this rain event overall are going to stay on the warmer, drier side in that northwestern area of the Corn Belt, and that's going to continue to put pressure on this market. So again, that's going to be something we're going to watch here and see where those numbers come in. Plus, just beyond what's happening in North and South Dakota, that dryness continues all the way up into the Canadian prairies. It's going to affect the spring wheat crop there as well as the canola crop, which that could come into play again in soybean oil. So the weather story is not done. Even though we got some rain coming through, we're stabilizing things in some regions. And, now we got to see when we get into the heat of the summertime here with June, July, and August in front of us. We got some moisture in the surface, but that subsoil moisture is still very, very limited. So it's not going to take much. It's just going to keep this market extremely volatile, but we also get a couple weeks of hot, dry forecasts again across the grain belt. You're going to see the prices reflected until we get a better idea where this crop is going to be, and that probably won't be till harvest.
And John, real quick, you mentioned the acreage numbers and stocks report next week. Any thoughts on marketing plans overall? I know a lot of farmers have been reassessing things here the last week or two. Any general thoughts you have for producers as we head into that report? Anything they should look at doing if they are reassessing things right now?
Well, again, I talked about this last week. We want to make sure we got some balance going into that report. Even if you're a little light on sales and you don't want to pull the trigger here because we're way off the highs, you're still looking at 530, 540 corn. I would say any strength in here if you feel comfortable, at least in terms of your production, and want to add a little more in, build that base. Keep those out of the money calls or bull call spreads over top to keep that ownership into the summer and into the harvest. So again, we still want some balance there. I've been a put buyer most of this week, looking at strategies out into March, just to kind of protect the floor longer term in that regard. So at least we're going into that report with some sales in, with calls over top. If the market takes off, we got bushels there and those calls to work. If the market were to fall apart, if we get a heavier than expected number, at least we got some good floor put together with sales, and then the put play and puts in play as well. I would look at that for both corn and soybeans, and just make sure you go into that report balanced, and then we'll let the numbers hit. We'll let the market shake it out. We'll get some new goalposts set for the fall, and then we'll go from there. But that's really what I think we're looking at right now, is just trying to find a way to get this market to get a new plan, and based on those numbers, which are going to be key for us to carry all the way through till next fall.
John, over in livestock here briefly today, cattle markets and hogs too. We've been seeing product prices fall, and hogs were down again today, especially that front month contract. Cattle were a little more mixed. Why don't we start with that cattle market? Any thoughts you have as we near the end of the week with that cattle market, that we've been seeing some better prices in feedlot country here the last few trading sessions?
Yeah, we had a pretty good weekend so far in cash trade, and kind of all over the map based on region. Some 25, 26 trade in the north, 22 trade in the south. All of that is still trading a little bit higher. That was some of the support we saw earlier in the week. But then we got to come back to those carcass values. Again, strong drop in choice carcasses again today at midday. It makes me wonder if this cash trade, even though it's nice, could be a little bit fleeting and maybe just our spike out here for this, going into the summer. So I'm watching that very closely. Obviously, we got cattle on feed numbers tomorrow. Wouldn't be surprised the market tried to square up a little bit today and be choppy tomorrow going into those numbers, because I think that could really set the price direction as we move forward, is going to be that report. And let's see where those cattle numbers are. Again, numbers are still going to be a little bit skewed due to the COVID situation last year during this window. To make sure we compare back to 2019 for total cattle on feed, and those placement numbers as well. But that's kind of what I think the cattle market's looking at right now. Again, feeders might be more reactive to what happens in the grain markets. Grains were soft today. Feeders saw a nice recovery. It's just going to be a choppy market here in the short term, but I'm still leaning a little bit more on the cautious side. Just didn't like the fact that cattle could not get back out through those highs from the other day and turned it right back down into some selling pressure yesterday.
Well, John, I know we're both short on time here today, and I appreciate you joining us. And I know folks can reach out to you at Total Farm Marketing by going to the website, totalfarmmarketing.com, or by calling 800-334-9779 and reaching out to you. John, thanks again. We'll have our normal show next week. Thanks for joining me, and have a great weekend, John.
Thanks, Zach. Have a good time. Have a good week, and enjoy the fairs.
Definitely. John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing, our guest today here on Market Talk. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm your host, Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.